Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite DC characters, Jason Todd, who obviously is one of my favorite DC characters. But he's had a very checkered history. And there are three distinct versions of this character. The first version is the pre-crisis version. Now, as some of you know, in the mid-80s, DC had a crisis, and afterwards they had a reboot. For example, after the crisis, Superman was rebooted with John Byrne. Now, this is Jason Todd before this crisis, who, as we see here, has orangish hair. And this is the version that sometimes is accused of being a Dick Grayson knockoff, mainly because of the fact that it came from the circus. But he did have some good stories, and some good Batman villains appeared during this time period. And Bruce tried to adopt him for a while. And let's not forget, this is the version that took down Mongol with the Black Mercy. And I feel that Alan Moore was kind of trying to say with this that it's not the superhero, Superman, Batman, or Wonder Woman, who take down Mongol. It's the average being. In fact, when Jason Todd is throwing down the Black Mercy, he takes a comment that Mongol said and throws it back at him. Almost intelligent, huh? So he's very much throwing that in his face. The second version is the post-crisis version after, the reboot. And has most, unique origin. He's living on the streets. He's kind of an orphan, and Two-Face harmed his family, and, so on. And I really like this origin story, in fact. The other thing, though, unfortunately, is this is the one that is accused of, being a bad-mouthed brat. People, complain about Damian, just as they also complain about this version of Jason Todd. And also, in this issue of Batman, probably can't see the number, but you'll at least see the, cover. Jason Todd confronts a rapist/murderer. And he confronts him, and the guy falls to his death. And it's very, if you'll forget the pun, left in the air whether or not Jason Todd pushed him or just, let him fall and didn't care. He was pretty much, okay that the guy died. But this version is probably most well known for this storyline. And this is probably the most, printed version, storylines with this character. DC recently printed out issues with his origin story, but this is probably what we really know this version of Jason Todd for. The fact that he was killed by the Joker. His most significant role is that storyline. Now, the third Jason Todd is the Red Hood version. This one. And I'm going to be combining a couple things. I'm going to be taking the pre-52 version and the post-52 version and, just joining them together for the sake of convenience. First off, there was, let's just briefly talk about the Hush storyline, where it seems as if Batman is talking to a resurrected Jason Todd, but it turns out to be Clayface. Then later we get the Red Hood storyline, where indeed Jason Todd is brought back to life. Then they tried to mess it up by, Jason Todd stood in for Clayface, blah, 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 blah. But anyways, this storyline brought him back. But I think the movie is, not to mention a very good Batman movie. I'll talk about this in another time. Kind of did things better. Partly because I felt this storyline was kind of slow meandering, didn't have much focus, and there's one other thing which I'll talk about that I didn't much care for. Same writer here, he tightens up the action and, tells a much better story, I feel. Now this version of Jason Todd is by far the most popular, and I feel that with this version, Jason Todd has at long last won his claim to fame, and I think it's very much because he's its own man now. He's appearing in comics, forming his own team or joining up with Arsenal, and he has top billing. His name is before Outsiders and before Arsenal. It's Red Hood first, the other guy's second. So he doesn't even need to be in Gotham or in Batman's universe. He can be on his own. Sometimes he can interact with Batman's, but he doesn't have to. So I think that's what, really, made him the popular character that he is now. That he is his own person. Now, sometimes he can be an out-and-out villain, sometimes he can be an anti-hero, sometimes he's in between. It depends on the writers, of course. Sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, his origin and his backstory is tinkered with. 52 had, in one of their issue zeros, storyline I personally did not care for, where the Joker pretty much set up every aspect of Jason's life, and just set him up to kill him. I didn't really care for this, because for one thing, it's too convenient, and you can easily poke holes at this storyline. And the other thing is, Joker is not for long schemes. He's more spur of the moment character. And another thing I didn't like for is that in comics, he's brought back because of the whole Superboy punch nonsense, which I think is, BS personally. I much preferred how the movie does it, where it's just the Lazarus Pit, and that's all you really need. In some ways, I accept this more as the origin story of how Jason Todd is back to life. But the point is, this is the most popular version, and I think this movie also helps because it was a very good movie. Jensen Ackles voices the character very well. Some know him better at on Supernatural as Dean Winchester. And Ackles, Jensen, had previously appeared in another DC universe in Smallville. But here he's playing Jason Todd, and very effectively. So, the fact that Jason Todd could be his own person and wasn't a very good Batman movie is, something that makes the Red Hood version the most unique and the best of all three of them. So that's all I had to talk about for right now with Jason Todd.